They say history is written by the victorious. But what happens when the victor is a woman in a world that refused to write her name? What happens when someone so powerful emerges that even those who hated her could not erase her story? There exists a figure in the shadows of the 13th century, a woman whose strength terrified emperors, whose presence on the battlefield turned the tide of wars, whose legend was so impossible that 700 years later people still debate whether she was real. Her name was Khutulun, and this is not just her story. This is the story of what happens when one person refuses to be anything less than extraordinary. The Mongol Empire in 1260. Picture it. Not the romantic vision of distant steppes and noble warriors. Picture the reality: blood, dust, the thunder of 10,000 hooves shaking the earth. An empire built on the bones of conquered nations, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the gates of Vienna. The largest continuous land empire humanity has ever known. And somewhere in the heart of this empire of violence and conquest, a girl is born who will become more dangerous than any army. Her father is Khutulun Khan, direct descendant of Genghis Khan himself, a man who controls territories larger than most modern countries, a warlord who commands hundreds of thousands of soldiers. And he has 14 sons, 14 princes, each one trained from birth to inherit power, each one groomed to become a Khan, each one destined for greatness. And then there is Khutulun, bright moon. That is what her name means. But there is nothing soft about this child, nothing gentle. From the moment she can understand language, she understands one thing above all else. The Mongol world respects only strength. Everything else is weakness, and weakness is death. Most noble daughters in this era learn poetry, music, the arts of managing households and securing political marriages. They learn to smile, to bow, to exist in the shadows of men. They learn to be silent. Khutulun learns to kill. Her training begins before most children learn to read. Mongol warriors start young because the steppe does not wait for you to grow up. It does not care about your childhood. You learn to ride, or you die. You learn to fight, or you are conquered. You adapt, or you are erased. This is the only law that matters. By age 5, Khutulun sits on a horse like she was born there. By 7, she can shoot arrows while riding at full gallop, hitting targets her brothers miss. By 9, she is wrestling boys twice her age and winning. Not sometimes, every single time. By 12, she is training with her father's elite guard, grown men, hardened warriors who have killed in battle, and she is beating them. This is not a story of natural talent. This is a story of obsession. While her brothers rest, Khutulun trains. While they feast, she studies combat. While they boast about future victories, she is in the training yard, perfecting techniques that will define her legend. She does not train to be good, she trains to be unbeatable. And there is a difference. Her brothers watch this with complicated feelings. Pride, yes, she is their sister, but also something else, something darker, fear, because they are beginning to understand what their father already knows. This girl might be stronger than all of them combined. Kaidu watches his daughter with emotions he cannot fully name. In her, he sees something he has never seen before. Not just skill, not just strength, something more fundamental. A refusal to accept limitations. A rejection of every rule that says she cannot be what she chooses to be. And he makes a decision that will change everything. He does not hide her away. He does not marry her off to secure an alliance. He does not force her into the role society expects. Instead, he does something radical. He treats her exactly like his sons. Same training, same expectations, same opportunities. And in doing so, he creates something unprecedented in Mongol history. He creates a weapon wrapped in human skin. But being the most dangerous warrior in your father's court is one thing. Proving it to an entire empire is something else entirely. And Khutulun is about to make a declaration that will shock the Mongol world to its foundation. Suitors begin arriving when she reaches marriageable age. This is inevitable. She is a princess of the golden family, descendant of Genghis Khan. Her hand in marriage represents alliances, power, legitimacy. Every ambitious man in the empire wants her, not because of who she is, because of what she represents. They come bearing gifts, horses, gold, promises of devotion. They recite poetry. They boast of their accomplishments. They compete with each other to prove their worth. And Khutulun refuses every single one, not politely, not diplomatically. She simply says no, over and over again, no. Her father eventually confronts her. This cannot continue. Political marriages are how empires function, how alliances are built, how power is consolidated. You must choose someone, anyone. We need these alliances. And Khutulun looks at her father with eyes that have never blinked in combat and makes a proposal that will become legend. I will marry, but only under one condition. Any man who wishes to marry me must defeat me in wrestling. Traditional Mongol wrestling, no weapons, no tricks, just strength and skill. And every man who challenges me and loses must pay a price. 10 horses. The silence that follows this declaration is absolute. You can hear the wind outside. You can hear breathing. You can hear the world trying to process what she just said, because this is not just unusual. This is revolutionary. This is a woman declaring herself equal to any man in an empire built on male dominance. This is a princess turning marriage into combat. This is someone rewriting every rule. Some call it arrogance. Some call it madness. Some call it an insult to every tradition the Mongols hold sacred. But Kaidu, after a long moment where the future of empires hangs in the balance, does something unexpected. He laughs, not mockery. Genuine amusement, mixed with pride, and he agrees. Let any man who wishes to marry my daughter step forward. Let them prove their worth. Let them face her in the wrestling ring, and let the horses pile up when they fail. The first challenger arrives within days, a prince from a neighboring territory, wealthy, connected, confident. He brings his 10 horses, he brings his retinue, he brings his absolute certainty that this will be easy. A woman, how strong could she possibly be? The match lasts 90 seconds. Khutulun moves like something that should not exist. Speed, power, technique so refined it looks like magic. The prince finds himself on his back in the dirt before he understands what happened. His confidence shattered. His horses claimed, his dignity destroyed. And this is just the beginning. They come from everywhere. Warriors, athletes, champions, men who have never lost a wrestling match in their lives, men trained from childhood in combat, men who believe their masculinity guarantees victory. They all bring their 10 horses. They all make their challenges. They all lose. Khutulun defeats them systematically, methodically, without mercy, not because she hates them, because she is proving something that needs proving. Every victory is a statement. Every defeated man is evidence. Every claimed horse is proof that she is not a woman pretending to be a warrior. She is a warrior who happens to be a woman. And there is a difference. The collection of horses grows. 10 becomes 100. 100 becomes 1,000. According to Marco Polo, who will later document her story for a European audience that will not believe him, she accumulates over 10,000 horses. 10,000 men defeated, 10,000 statements made, 10,000 proofs that she is exactly who she claims to be. But numbers do not tell the real story. The real story is what these victories represent. Every time Khutulun steps into that wrestling circle, she is declaring war on every assumption about what women can be. Every victory is a refusal, a rejection, a revolution wrapped in a wrestling match. People travel for weeks to witness these matches. Betting becomes an industry. Stories spread across the empire like wildfire. The princess who cannot be defeated, the warrior who has never lost, the woman who is rewriting what is possible. And with each victory, her legend grows beyond anything anyone anticipated. But legends attract challengers, and the bigger the legend, the more dangerous the challenger. Word reaches Khutulun of a man who has never lost, Not once, not ever. A champion from the Western Territories who has defeated over 500 opponents in sanctioned matches. A man so confident in his abilities that he does not bring 10 horses, he brings 100. This is not just another challenger. This is a statement. This is a man declaring that he will be the one to end her undefeated streak. That he will be the one remembered as the man who defeated the undefeatable princess. That he will be the one who puts her back in her place. The news spreads faster than cavalry. People abandon their work, traders delay journeys, warriors ride for days just to witness what everyone believes will be the match of the century, because this is different. This feels different. The champion is not some arrogant prince or ambitious warrior looking for glory. This is a professional, a man who has dedicated his entire life to wrestling, a man who has studied every technique, who has defeated every style, who has never, not once, tasted defeat. Even Khutulun's own family shows concern. Her father takes her aside. You do not have to accept this challenge. There is no shame in recognizing when an opponent is too dangerous. This man is different from the others. He has spent his entire life preparing for moments like this. Think carefully about what you are risking. And Khutulun understands what her father is really saying. He is not worried about her losing a wrestling match. He is worried about what happens to everything she has built, every victory she has claimed, every statement she has made, every door she has kicked open. If she loses now, all of it becomes questionable. All of it becomes a story about a woman who got lucky until she faced a real opponent. All of it unravels. She looks at her father with the same eyes that have stared down hundreds of challengers and says something that defines her entire existence. If I refuse now, none of it ever mattered. Every man I have defeated will say I only fought opponents I knew I could beat. Every victory becomes hollow. Every statement becomes a lie. I will fight him, and I will win, not because I have to, because I choose to. The day arrives. The entire encampment empties. This is not just entertainment. This is history being written in real time. This is the moment that will define whether everything Khutulun represents is real or fantasy, whether she is truly extraordinary or just lucky, whether the legend can survive contact with reality. The champion enters first. He is enormous, taller than almost any Mongol warrior, shoulders that look like they were carved from mountains, hands that look like they could crush stone. He performs the traditional eagle dance, the ritual movements that begin every Mongol wrestling match. His movements radiate confidence, power, inevitability. He has done this dance 500 times, and every single time he has won. Then Khutulun enters, and something shifts in the atmosphere. She wears the traditional wrestling outfit, the same clothing every wrestler wears, but on her it carries different weight. She is not just another wrestler. She is a symbol. She represents every person who has ever been told they cannot do something because of who they are. Every individual who has ever been limited by expectations that have nothing to do with capability. Every soul who has ever looked at the world's rules and said, no. She performs the eagle dance. Her movements are different from the champion's. Where his demonstrate raw power, hers show precision. Where his project dominance, hers project certainty. Not confidence, certainty. There is a difference. Confidence is believing you might win. Certainty is knowing you will. They circle each other. The crowd holds its breath. Somewhere in the distance, a horse snorts. The wind carries dust across the wrestling ground. Time seems to slow down. Everything that matters in this moment exists in the space between these two people. Everything that comes after depends on what happens next. The champion strikes first. He is fast, terrifyingly fast for someone his size. His hands reach for her vest, seeking the grip that has defeated 500 opponents. But Khutulun is already moving, not away, through. She slides inside his reach with movement that looks impossible. He adjusts instantly. He is a professional. He is trained for every scenario. He gets a grip on her vest. He pulls, using his weight, using his strength, using every advantage he possesses. For the first time in hundreds of matches, Khutulun is pulled off balance. The crowd gasps. Some people actually stand up. This has never happened before. No one has ever successfully moved Khutulun against her will. The champion has done it. He is winning. But here is what no one except Khutulun understands. She is not off balance by accident. She is off balance by choice, because she understands something about wrestling that most people never learn. You do not fight against momentum. You use it. You transform your opponent's strength into their weakness. You make their power work for you. As the champion pulls her forward, she drops her weight, she rotates, she hooks her leg behind his, and suddenly, physics takes over. All that size, all that strength, all that momentum, it is all working against him now. He realizes what is happening. His eyes widen. But it is too late. Khutulun pulls, not with her arms, with her entire body, with technique refined through thousands of hours of training, with leverage that turns his advantages into liabilities. The champion crashes to the ground with an impact that sends dust exploding into the air. The sound echoes across the camp, and for a moment, nobody breathes. Khutulun stands. She extends her arms in the traditional victory pose, and the camp explodes, cheering so loud it probably reaches the next territory. The champion lies on his back, staring at the sky, trying to understand how he lost in less than a minute. Trying to process how a woman half his size just destroyed his undefeated record using nothing but skill and intelligence. Khutulun claims her 100 horses, but she does something else, something that shows her genius extends beyond combat. She helps the champion to his feet, she shows respect, and then she offers him a position in her father's army. You are skilled, your strength would be valuable in battle. Serve my father and earn the honor you seek. Some see this as mercy, others see it as strategy. By converting defeated opponents into allies, Khutulun is not just winning matches, she is building a power base. She is transforming enemies into supporters. She is turning every victory into political capital. The champion accepts, and Khutulun walks away, knowing she has proven something that can never be disputed. She is not just equal to any man in the empire. She might be superior to all of them. But being the greatest wrestler in the Mongol Empire is not enough. It has never been enough. Because Khutulun does not want to be remembered as someone who won wrestling matches. She wants to be remembered as someone who changed what is possible. And that requires a different arena entirely. The political situation in Central Asia is collapsing. Kublai Khan, ruling from his capital in China, claims authority over all Mongol territories. He believes he is the rightful great Khan, the supreme ruler of the empire Genghis Khan built. But Kaidu, Khutulun's father, refuses to acknowledge this claim. He sees Kublai as corrupted, as someone who has abandoned true Mongol culture in favor of Chinese civilization, as someone unworthy of leading the empire. War is inevitable. Both sides know it. The only question is when it begins and how it ends. And when Kaidu begins assembling his armies, preparing for the conflict that will define the next 2 decades, he makes a decision that shocks every general in his command. He appoints Khutulun as a military commander, not a symbolic position, not a figurehead meant to inspire troops while men make the real decisions, a genuine battlefield commander with tactical authority over thousands of warriors, with the power to make life and death decisions in combat, with responsibility for victories and defeats. The older generals are outraged. She is a woman. Wrestling matches are one thing. But leading men into battle, making tactical decisions under pressure, commanding warriors who have fought for decades, this is madness. The men will not follow her. They will not respect her authority. This appointment will destroy morale and cost us battles. Kaidu's response is simple and devastating. Watch. Khutulun's first real test comes faster than anyone expects. A skirmish near the Talas River. Kaidu's forces engage with a detachment of Kublai's army. The battle is chaos. Arrows darkening the sky. Cavalry charges shaking the ground. Hand-to-hand combat in clouds of dust and blood, men screaming, horses dying, the brutal reality of Mongol warfare. Khutulun rides with 300 horsemen. Her mission is clear: flank the enemy position, attack from the rear, create chaos and confusion. Standard cavalry tactics. But as her force circles around to execute the maneuver, they discover a problem that could destroy them. The enemy has positioned a reserve force exactly where Khutulun planned to attack, 900 men. Prepared. Waiting. If she proceeds with the original plan, her 300 riders will be slaughtered. This is the moment that separates good commanders from exceptional ones, the moment where plans meet reality and you must decide in seconds while men are dying around you. The moment where hesitation means death and the wrong decision means massacre. Some commanders would retreat, some would force the attack and accept massive casualties. Some would freeze, paralyzed by impossible choices. Khutulun does something different, something that reveals the tactical genius hidden beneath the wrestling legend. She splits her force. 200 riders continue the flanking maneuver as planned. But instead of attacking, they make noise. Enormous amounts of noise. War cries, drums, horn blasts, creating the illusion of a major assault. The enemy reserve force sees this apparent attack and moves to intercept, exactly as Khutulun predicted they would. And while 900 enemy soldiers rush to stop 200 riders making noise, Khutulun takes her remaining 100 warriors on a wider circle, moving faster, staying out of sight behind a ridgeline, positioning herself not where the enemy expects her, but where they are most vulnerable. By the time the enemy commanders realize what is happening, it is too late. Khutulun's 100 riders crash into the enemy command position from a direction they never anticipated. The attack is devastating, not because of numbers, because of surprise, because of speed, because of perfect timing and flawless execution. Officers are cut down before they can organize defenses, command structures collapse, and in the chaos, Khutulun does something that will become her signature move on the battlefield. Something that seems impossible until you witness it. She rides directly at an enemy general. He is surrounded by bodyguards, protected, secure, but she does not care about bodyguards. She charges through them like they are made of air. Her horse is trained for exactly this kind of chaos. Her skills are honed for exactly this kind of moment. And as she passes the general at full gallop, she does something that defies belief. She leans from her saddle, grabs him by his armor with one hand, and literally pulls him off his horse. She holds him against her side like a sack of grain and rides out of the enemy formation, carrying him as a prisoner. The enemy soldiers watch their general captured by a single warrior in front of their eyes. Morale does not just break, it disintegrates. Men who were ready to fight to the death suddenly reconsider their commitment. The battle turns into a rout, Kublai's forces scatter, and Khutulun returns to her father's camp with the captured general. When she throws him at Kaidu's feet, the entire army witnesses it, and from that moment forward, nobody questions whether men will follow her into battle. They will, because she wins, because she is brilliant, because following her means victory and opposing her means capture or death. The generals who protested her appointment fall silent. What can they say? She just accomplished in her first real battle what most commanders never achieve in a lifetime. This becomes her pattern over the next 15 years, battle after battle, campaign after campaign. She does not just participate, she excels, she innovates, she studies her enemies. She adapts tactics. She understands that Mongol warfare is not about brute force. It is about mobility, deception, psychological warfare, breaking enemy morale before the real fighting begins, and she is a master of all of it. The technique of grabbing enemy warriors from horseback becomes specifically associated with her. Enemy soldiers begin to recognize her on the battlefield. They learn to fear her. Because if she gets close enough, you are already captured. Your battle is already over. Some soldiers literally retreat when they see her approaching, not because they are cowards, because they are rational. Fighting Khutulun in single combat is not bravery. It is suicide. But here is what makes her truly exceptional beyond the combat prowess. She protects her soldiers. In one battle, a portion of Kaidu's army is ambushed during a retreat. The rear guard is being destroyed by pursuing enemy cavalry. Men are dying. The entire army could be annihilated if the pursuit is not stopped. This is the kind of moment where commanders make impossible calculations. How many lives can we sacrifice to save the rest? Who gets abandoned so others can survive? Khutulun does not make those calculations. She does not accept those choices. She assembles every available horseman she can find, approximately 2,000 riders. And without waiting for orders, without asking permission, she leads a countercharge directly into the pursuing force. The enemy expects desperation, disorganization, a last desperate attempt by a defeated army. What they get is a perfectly executed cavalry assault led by the most dangerous warrior in Central Asia. Khutulun's force punches through the enemy formation like a spear through silk. They wheel around, they attack again from a different angle. The pursuing army does not just stop, it breaks apart in terror. The rear guard is saved, and Khutulun cements her reputation as not just a warrior, but a leader who will risk everything for her soldiers. Her troops begin calling her the shield of the people, not because she defends territory, because she defends them. Word of her military success spreads beyond the Mongol Empire. In Persia, chroniclers write about the warrior princess who captures enemies with her bare hands. In China, Kublai Khan's advisors warn him that Kaidu's greatest weapon is not his armies, it is his daughter. In distant Europe, travelers bring back stories of a woman warrior that sound like myths, that sound impossible, that sound like the kind of fantasy tale people invent. Except this one is real. By 1290, Khutulun has become the most powerful of Kaidu's children, not the eldest, not male, but the most powerful. She commands armies, she wins battles, she has her father's complete trust. She is the person he relies on when everything else fails, and this creates a problem that nobody anticipated, a problem that will force Khutulun to make choices that have nothing to do with combat and everything to do with survival. Kaidu is aging. The constant warfare has taken its toll. Years of fighting Kublai Khan, years of maintaining power through force and will, years of holding together a Khanate that could fracture at any moment. He begins to think about succession, about what happens when he dies, about who will lead his people. And by every tradition, by every law, by every expectation of Mongol culture, one of his 14 sons should be his heir. But Kaidu begins to consider something that has never happened in Mongol history. What if Khutulun succeeded him? What if the most capable person, regardless of gender, became Khan? What if merit mattered more than tradition? When whispers of this possibility begin circulating through the court, the reaction is explosive. Khutulun's brothers are outraged, especially the eldest. He sees his birthright being stolen. He sees everything he has been promised his entire life being given to his sister, and he is not alone. Allied Khans send messages questioning whether they would honor agreements with a female ruler. Advisors warn that naming a woman as heir could fracture the entire Khanate, could lead to civil war, could destroy everything Kaidu has built. The pressure is immense, and Khutulun watches all of this unfold with growing understanding. Her father's favor, the thing she has earned through 2 decades of unmatched service, is becoming poison. It is turning her family against itself. It is threatening the very thing she has fought to protect. In private councils, Kaidu makes his preference clear. Khutulun is worth any 10 of her brothers. She has proven her capability in every way that matters. She has won battles they never could. She has demonstrated leadership they cannot match. Why should an accident of birth determine who leads when actual ability could determine it instead? But the advisors push back. The Mongol Empire has never had a female Khan. Not once. Not ever. The precedent would be too radical. Your allies would desert you. Your enemies would see weakness. Your own sons might rebel. You would be starting a civil war on the day you announce the succession. It is a trap with no escape. If Kaidu names Khutulun as his heir, he risks destroying everything he has built. If he does not, he is passing over the most qualified person simply because of tradition, simply because of gender, simply because the world is not ready for what she represents. And Khutulun finds herself in an impossible position. She loves her father. She has fought beside him for 20 years. She has bled for his cause. She has given everything to preserve his power. But she is watching what her success is doing to her family. Her brothers avoid her at gatherings. Whispered conversations stop when she enters rooms. She can feel the resentment building like a thunderstorm. She can see the future, and it is civil war. One night, she goes to her father in private. Just the two of them. No advisors, no courtiers, no witnesses. And she says something that will define the rest of her life. "You must choose one of my brothers as your heir." Kaidu stares at her with surprise and frustration. "None of them have your skills. None of them have earned what you have earned. They are princes because they were born princes. You are extraordinary because you made yourself extraordinary. How can I choose lesser men over you?" Khutulun's response is quiet, certain, devastating, because if you name me heir, this family will tear itself apart, and when you die, everything we fought for will collapse into civil war. Everything we built will be destroyed. Not by our enemies, by us. "So you would step aside?" Kaidu asks. "You would let lesser men take power simply to avoid conflict after everything you have accomplished?" And here Khutulun says something that reveals the deepest truth about who she is. "I would preserve what we built. I would protect our people. If that means I cannot rule, then I cannot rule. But I can still serve. I can still fight. I can still be the shield of the people." Power does not require a throne. It is a moment of staggering selflessness, or perhaps staggering pragmatism. She is choosing family unity over personal ambition. She is choosing her people over her own legend. She is recognizing that sometimes the greatest act of strength is knowing when not to fight. But Kaidu is not ready to accept this. Not yet. "I will think on this," he tells her. "Perhaps there is another way." Months pass. The succession question remains unresolved. And then, in 1301, Kaidu becomes seriously ill. He is in his 70s, ancient by Mongol standards. Years of warfare and stress have worn him down to nothing, and now his body is finally surrendering. As he lies dying, the succession crisis reaches its peak. Messengers rush between camps. Brothers position their supporters. Allied Khans make calculations about which son to back. The entire Khanate holds its breath. One wrong move and everything explodes into civil war. One miscalculation and decades of work vanish in blood and chaos. And Khutulun makes her move. She gathers her brothers together, all 14 of them. She looks at each one, and she makes a proposal that saves everything. "Our father is dying. We can either fight each other for power, destroying everything he built and killing each other in the process, or we can come together and choose a leader who can hold this Khanate together." She pauses. The silence is absolute. "I propose we support our brother Horus. He is not the strongest warrior. He is not the greatest general, but he is wise. He is diplomatic. He is fair. He can unite our family. And I will serve as his military commander, ensuring our armies remain strong and our enemies remain afraid." It is a masterstroke of political strategy. By voluntarily stepping aside and proposing a compromise candidate, Khutulun diffuses the succession crisis before it becomes civil war. Some brothers are suspicious, some are relieved, but ultimately they agree. The alternative is too terrible to contemplate. When Kaidu dies shortly after, Horus becomes Khan, and Khutulun, as promised, becomes his primary military commander. She gives up the throne she could have claimed, the power she earned, the position she deserved. But in doing so, she saves her father's legacy, she protects her people, she prevents civil war. And she proves something more important than any wrestling match or any battle. She proves that strength is not just about taking power. Sometimes it is about knowing when to let it go. But here is what the history books often miss. Khutulun's story does not end with her father's death. What she does in the years that follow proves that she never needed a throne to shape the world. That power comes in forms that thrones cannot contain. After Kaidu dies, Khutulun faces renewed pressure. You must marry now. The wrestling contests need to end. You have no heirs. You are aging. The time for defiance has passed. She is in her 40s. She has spent more than 2 decades building a legend that spans continents. Her collection of horses from defeated wrestlers represents actual economic power. And she has never married, never submitted, never bent. But now, with her father gone and her position secure as military commander under Horus, she does something unexpected. She chooses a husband. His name is lost to most historical records. Some sources suggest he might have been named Ghazan or Abtai. What is certain is this: he is not a prince, not a champion, not a great warrior. He is a loyal soldier from her father's army, someone she trusts, someone who has served faithfully, someone who, crucially, will never try to control her or diminish her power. The court is scandalized. After all these years of refusing princes and champions, after accumulating thousands of horses and defeating every challenger, she chooses someone completely ordinary, someone unremarkable, someone nobody expected. But this is vintage Khutulun. She has always made decisions on her own terms, always written her own rules, always chosen her own path. Why would marriage be any different? The marriage is quiet, no great ceremony, no political spectacle, just a private commitment between 2 people. And notably, Khutulun does not give up her military command. She does not retreat into domestic life. She does not become someone's wife and stop being herself. She continues to lead armies, continues to ride into battle, continues to be the warrior she has always been. Her husband becomes something unusual in Mongol society. A man defined not by his own achievements, but by his wife's legend. And according to the limited records that survive, he seems perfectly content with this arrangement. But darkness follows legend. Whispers begin to circulate, rumors that poison everything they touch. Some claim that Khutulun murdered her father to prevent him from naming her brothers as heirs. Others suggest she killed several brothers in secret to maintain her power. Still others accuse her of witchcraft, claiming that her unnatural strength must come from dark magic, that no woman could accomplish what she accomplished through mere skill and training. None of these accusations are ever proven. None are based on credible evidence, but they persist in the historical record, written down by chroniclers who cannot accept that a woman could achieve what Khutulun achieved through merit alone. This is the double-edged sword of being exceptional in a world that believes you should not exist. You become so extraordinary that people literally cannot believe you are real. They invent supernatural explanations, they fabricate crimes, they create narratives that make sense to their worldview, even when those narratives contradict all evidence. Think about this for a moment. If Khutulun had actually poisoned her father or murdered her brothers, why would she voluntarily step aside from succession? Why would she support Horus instead of seizing power herself? Why would she continue serving as a military commander rather than claiming the throne? The accusations make no logical sense, but they make emotional sense to people who need to believe that exceptional women must be evil women, that power in female hands must be stolen or supernatural, that success must come from darkness rather than discipline. Khutulun ignores the rumors. She has more important work to do. Under Horus's rule, with Khutulun as military commander, the Khanate remains strong. She continues to lead campaigns, continues to win battles, continues to be the shield that protects her people. The historical record becomes unclear in her final years. Some sources suggest she died in battle, falling in combat like a true warrior. Others indicate she died of natural causes, surrounded by her family. The truth is lost to time, lost to the same forces that tried to erase her entire existence. What we know for certain is this: by the time of her death, Khutulun had served as a military commander for over 30 years. She had participated in dozens of major battles. She had personally captured enemy warriors in combat more times than anyone could count. She had accumulated a fortune in horses from defeated wrestling challengers. She had influenced the succession of one of the most powerful khanates in the Mongol Empire, and she had done all of it while being a woman in a world that insisted women could not do any of it. But here is where Khutulun's story takes its most remarkable turn. After her death, her legend does not fade. It transforms, it spreads, it crosses oceans and centuries. It becomes something even she could not have predicted. 700 years after Khutulun's death, her story resurfaces in the most unexpected way. In the 13th century, a Venetian traveler named Marco Polo journeys through the Mongol Empire. He spends years in Kublai Khan's court, documenting everything he sees. And when he returns to Europe, he writes a book, The Travels of Marco Polo. In this book, he tells the story of a warrior princess, a woman who defeats all challengers in wrestling, a woman who rides into battle and captures enemy soldiers with her bare hands. He calls her Aegean, possibly a corruption of one of Khutulun's other names. European readers are fascinated and skeptical in equal measure. A woman warrior defeating men in combat, commanding armies, this must be exaggeration, Oriental fantasy, the kind of tale travelers invent to make their journeys seem more exotic. But the story persists, it spreads, it captures imaginations. In the 18th century, an Italian playwright named Carlo Gozzi writes a theatrical work called Turandot. It tells the story of a princess who challenges suitors, executing those who fail her tests. The name Turandot derives from Turandokt, meaning daughter of Turan, a reference to Central Asian origins. The story is clearly inspired by Khutulun's wrestling challenges, though transformed through centuries of retelling. Changed, softened, made acceptable to European audiences who could not imagine the real woman behind the legend. Then in the early 20th century, Italian composer Giacomo Puccini adapts Gozzi's play into an opera. Turandot becomes one of the most famous operas in the world. The princess's aria, in Questa Regia, is performed in opera houses from New York to Sydney to Tokyo. Millions of people watch this opera. They see a strong, unconquerable princess who refuses to submit to any man's authority. They hear her declare her power and independence in music that soars and breaks hearts, and almost none of them realize they are watching a story that began with a real woman on the Mongol steppe 700 years earlier. A woman who was stronger, more dangerous, more revolutionary than any opera could capture. But Khutulun's influence extends beyond opera. In Mongolia today, she is remembered as a national hero. Traditional Mongolian wrestling tournaments honor her memory. Young girls are taught her story as an example of what Mongolian women can achieve, what any woman can achieve when society stops putting limits on human potential. Modern scholars studying the Mongol Empire have begun to reassess her historical importance. For centuries, she was treated as a curiosity, an interesting footnote, a strange anomaly. But contemporary historians recognize her as a significant political and military figure in her own right. She proved that gender restrictions are cultural constructs, not natural laws. She demonstrated that women can excel in traditionally male domains when given the opportunity and training. She showed that leadership ability has nothing to do with chromosomes and everything to do with capability. And she did all of this without modern feminism, without contemporary discussions of gender equality, without any of the philosophical frameworks we use today to discuss these issues. She simply did it. She became the person she was capable of becoming regardless of what society expected, regardless of what tradition demanded, regardless of what everyone said was impossible. And here is the most remarkable aspect of Khutulun's legacy. She never asked permission. She did not petition her father to let her train as a warrior. She simply trained. She did not request permission to refuse marriage. She simply refused. She did not ask if she could command armies. She simply commanded. She lived by a principle that was radical in the 13th century and remains radical today. The only permission you need to be extraordinary is your own. But there is one final detail that changes everything. Remember all those accusations? The whispers that she poisoned her father? The rumors of witchcraft? The suggestions that she murdered her brothers? Modern historians have investigated these claims thoroughly. They have examined available evidence, cross-referenced sources, analyzed political context, and here is what they have concluded. The accusations were almost certainly fabricated by later chroniclers who could not reconcile Khutulun's success with their beliefs about gender. Think about the logic. If Khutulun had actually poisoned her father or murdered her brothers, why would she voluntarily step aside from succession? Why would she support Horus instead of seizing power herself? Why would she continue serving as a military commander rather than claiming the throne? The accusations make no sense, given her actual behavior. What makes perfect sense is that male chroniclers, writing decades or centuries after her death, looked at her exceptional achievements and invented explanations that fit their worldview. She could not be successful because of skill, so she must have used poison. She could not be strong because of training, so she must have used witchcraft. The real scandal of Khutulun's story is not what she allegedly did. It is what people needed to believe about her, to make her existence acceptable to their understanding of the world. She was so far beyond what her society believed a woman could be that they literally had to invent crimes to explain her. They could not just accept that she was exceptional. That possibility was more unthinkable than poison, murder, and magic combined. And that tells us something profound about how history is written. How many other exceptional women have been erased from history or diminished by false accusations? How many Khutuluns are lost to time because their achievements were too threatening to record accurately? We will never know. But we know about this one. And her story survives not because people wanted to remember her, but because her achievements were too extraordinary to completely erase. She won too many battles, defeated too many champions, commanded too many soldiers, made too much impact. Even those who wanted to diminish her could not quite make her disappear. If you have been following along with Mementos historians, you know we dedicate ourselves to uncovering these hidden stories. The warriors, leaders, and revolutionaries who changed the world, but were written out of history books. Khutulun is one of them. But there are thousands more waiting to be remembered. Khutulun died sometime in the early 14th century. The exact date is unknown. The circumstances are unclear. Her final resting place has never been found. But her legacy endures in ways she could never have imagined. She proved that the only limits on human potential are the ones we accept. That tradition is just the opinion of dead people who never met you. That strength comes in forms society does not always recognize or value. She was a wrestler who never lost, a warrior who captured enemies with her bare hands, a commander who led 40,000 soldiers, a princess who chose her own path, a daughter who sacrificed the throne to save her family, a legend who became an opera without anyone remembering her name. And she did all of it without apology, without permission, without compromise. The Mongols had a word for warriors of exceptional courage and skill: Bata, hero. Khutulun earned that title 1,000 times over. But perhaps the most fitting tribute comes from Mongolia's oral traditions. Centuries after her death, Mongolian grandmothers still tell stories to their granddaughters, stories of a princess who was stronger than any man, a warrior who rode like thunder, a woman who proved that nothing, not tradition, not expectation, not the weight of an entire empire's assumptions, could cage a person determined to be free. They end these stories with a phrase that echoes across 7 centuries: be like Khutulun, be strong, be brave, be yourself no matter what the world says. That is her real legacy, not the battles won or the challenges defeated, but the possibility she represented. The door she kicked open for everyone who came after. Khutulun proved something that needed proving then and needs proving still. That heroism has no gender. That strength comes in many forms. And that one person refusing to accept the world's limitations can change what everyone believes is possible. Her name was Khutulun. bright moon, and she shone so brightly that even 700 years of darkness could not extinguish her light. Remember her, tell her story, and when someone tells you that you cannot do something because of who you are, remember the princess who defeated 10,000 men, commanded 40,000 soldiers, and changed history by simply refusing to accept the world's answer when it said no. This is her story. This is her legacy. This is what happens when one person decides that impossible is just another word for not yet tried.